Warren, you're a physicalist. You believe that everything about the person is purely physical. How then can you have what's called libertarian free will, where at any moment, not only can am I fully in charge of my decisions, but I can do anything. I can do otherwise. How do you get real, deep free will in a purely physical system?
Uh, I would not opt for total libertarian free will, partly because I don't think we can choose to do anything we can't imagine. And my imagination is constructed out of my experiences in the world. So I can't choose to do things I haven't learned about, been taught, experienced in the past. So a total libertarian free will doesn't exactly make sense to me. The question is, are we responsible agents? And responsible agents are ones who can entertain the possibility of actions and evaluate those on probably on the basis or most likely on the basis of things we've understood in the past. So for me, it's not free will, it's ability to entertain possibilities, to think about the future and to evaluate those future possibilities. And we obviously have a prospective mind. Our mind allows us to look in the future based on the past. And so we dredge out of the past scenarios for future action. And so my moral responsibility is evaluating those scenarios on the basis of what morality I know about, and I can evaluate those as good or bad.
Okay. As a physicalist, you believe the physical world is a closed system, that every cause has a prior cause. I'm leading you down a path.
I don't like the term a closed system, because I think a closed system is a term that comes out of physics, and physics is both reductionist and determinist. And as soon as you begin to think about dynamical systems, you now have emergent properties that are causal and high level, like evaluating a scenario about future action that is also a cause in the world, has causal impact. It's efficacious. My thinking is efficacious, even though I'm a physical system. So closed, the terminology bothers me, but.
Are all of the decisions that you make determined by prior physical actions in the world?
I am a complex enough agent to evaluate and have enough in my memories and imagination to think about a number of possibilities for the future. And I also have a whole lot of things of various kinds that I've learned on which I can evaluate those. And I can use those evaluative possibilities to evaluate those actions one way or another in the future. So I think I legitimately choose in a way that's not determined. It emerges out of things that I've learned, but it's not totally determined.
That would counter what many physicists say, that the world is a deterministic world, even if you factor into it at the most fundamental level the probabilities of quantum mechanics, because as they all decohere or work together, that the system of the world may have some fuzz because of the quantum mechanics, but that every previous action will cause a subsequent action. And so the history of the world is determined in that sense. So even though you think you're making a decision that you're totally in charge of, in reality, you're not.
I think there's a sort of a conceptual revolution going on. I think there is. And it is around something like dynamic systems or system thinking that involves emergent properties. I find that physicists are the least likely to find that conceptual revolution at all compatible. The physicists I know who are Christians have got to be body-soul dualists, because they cannot understand or have any ways of thinking about physical life as anything but determined.
That's interesting all by itself.
Yeah.
That of the physicists you know who are believers, they must be dualists.
Yeah, because physics is a closed system, and if you have a closed system, you can't have anything like free will or moral responsibility. And what is inherent in religious views generally, certainly Christian views, is that persons have choice and moral responsibility.
Right. So the only way they can get it is by
yeah.
some immaterial soul.
I think for a biologist, this is an easier thing to think about, because I think coming through biology, there's more and more understanding that at this level, there are properties of the system functioning at that level, maybe even as a neuron, that you can't exactly reduce to all of the molecules involved in the neuron. You have to take into account where that neuron sits in the network of neurons around it, what is the influence over time on the synapses of that neuron, or the sodium levels in the membranes. You have to take the history into account, and it's constrained. And so there's something emerging in the ongoing life or activity of that neuron that's more than just can be reduced to the molecules. And I think at every level in biology it's becoming, I think, increasingly apparent that there are non-reductive properties. And when you get to the level of human persons as whole human persons, particularly human brains as whole human brains, I think there are emergent properties that give us rather sophisticated agency. It's still agency drawn out of our experiences and organizations in the past, but it's legitimate agency, and it's not reduced in the sense that one would predict by saying that the system is a closed system. Now, I don't think that means there's new energy involved,
right.
But I think there's new information, and that new information leads to new causes, informational causes that aren't energy causes, or that harness the energy causes.
Now, I would say when the physicists are by themselves, when they would not be accused of being impolite, they would say that's because their biology friends really don't know enough about the underlying physics. They might be so crude as to say they're not smart enough to understand the underlying physics, so they come up with these kind of loose theories. But in reality, the physics controls, in which case the physicists divide into two categories. The ones who are not religious would immediately be deterministic, that the world is determined, and free will is, if not an illusion, at least has to be defined differently, compatible and all that. And those who are religious for other reasons then have to bring in an immortal soul in order to make sense of how it works.
And I just think there's a real hard conceptual thing to get our mind around. And it's even hard for me at times to think about how a physical system can organize itself in a way that its organization itself becomes a cause in the world. And that organization is a historical thing. These things in the past caused it to organize in this way. And now at this point in time, it's not reducible to the neurons or molecules. It's the organization of them that moves forward in the past. The other thing I think that it's easy for physics to do is freeze the world into this point in the next millisecond or something, whereas biological systems are constantly in feedback loops with the environment. So what happens next is as much due to what the feedback is from the environment. Having done X, I get feedback from doing X, so next time I do Y instead of X. And so you're constantly in very fast feedback interactions with the environment, which immediately, I think, begins to and that is information, and it's the information that the system uses in the feedback. So information drives the system, not reducible physics per se. It's the organization of that physics into information that drives the system.
And so if that were true, you would get a real free will, a richer free will than the physicists can imagine.
Yeah. So the way I think about it with sort of these dynamical properties, we are, as whole human beings, freer than physics or many physicists would like to think we are, that determinism. Although free is a a limited term. Many cognitive psychologists think that about 95% of our daily activity is pretty automatic, and then only about 5% of our daily activity is sort of consciously thought about, chosen. And so we're pretty automatic beings, but we still have our moments of freedom.